with the presentation by Raivo Kilomis from Estonia, we're continuing the thread about Eastern Europe and East European art, I think. And so I look forward to Raivo's presentation. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Andreas. My presentation has a long title, and it's based on my article, which has even longer title, I would say. And as you see, collisions on the Eastern-Western art axis, domestication of Eastern Europe as close other in the 90s. And mainly I'm going to talk about one project by Peeter Linnap, Estonian artist, the top 50, but just a few slides before. This article I mentioned, and I show the right title at the end. It's published already only in Estonian, and I would say that main sentiment or kind of emotion with what is behind this article is sort of disappointment when I, as Eastern European, and not only myself, but others as well, when they are reading about global art history, they are not finding themselves there, because their country and the countrymen and women are omitted completely. And but it's you're feeling sort of positive emotions when you recognize that other so-called Eastern European countries, researchers, art historians have the similar feeling. And there is an article by Piotr Piotrowski which reflects the same emotions, where he is discussing about a need for a horizontal history of European avant-garde, and telling that Eastern European artists are not quite other; they are close others, and this close other are taken from Bojana Page essay from the catalog After the Wall. And the Page in his essay is mentioning Boris Groys' Fremdene, but is not specifying from where she took it. But more or less it's that Eastern Europe is understood as a close other, that's similar as the Western part of Europe, but still different. And there in other text of Piotrowski, there is sort of invitation or for writing a different kind of art history, which is transnational and transregional, and not vertical. And as example of vertical art history, he brings book Art Since 1900. And naturally we have other associations with words vertical and horizontal. If you read Inge Arndt's text from the book edited by Stephen Kovac at the end of the Ostromenia,
the Media Revolutions.
Media Revolutions, she is talking about vertical cut through territorial entities and through vertical layers of culture and identities away from horizontal homogeneous binary marking of East and West, and vertical mapping, vertical measuring, and this different kind of combination of words are used there. And more or less it reflects the quite similar invitation which was seen in Petrovsky's texts to look at West and East as a similar territory. I'm actually talking about the Estonian case, then partly is naturally justified this sort of looking at remote countries or countries which are on the border of Eastern or Central Europe as, I wouldn't say backward, but countries who are coming later to the same ideas which are generated in the center somewhere. And it has happened throughout the decades, and maybe only decades where some sort of synchronicity has achieved, for instance, in Estonia, where 90s and maybe most kind of clear example of this complete synchronicity, I would say, was achieved in 2012 when Estonian artist Timo Toots got Golden and Ika at Ars Electronica interactive arts category. But in that text, I was discussing three cases, Syndicate case, and mostly I'm relying on Inge Arns and Andreas Brockman text about rise and decline of the syndicates. The second case is about exhibition Interpol, a global network from Stockholm and Moscow, which was organized in Stockholm in '96 between Swedish and international artists and Russian artists. And there was a huge scandal as Alexander Brenner and Oleg Kulik demolished installation of one Chinese American artist. It was already a very huge scandal, and there are a lot of texts still available online, Victor Miziano's texts and Oleg Kulik's text naturally. But in my understanding, all this case was something that Russians didn't felt themselves too respectfully treated. They felt so kind of insulted. They felt that they were kind of undervalued, and that's kind of emerged into the aggression on that exhibition. And the third case, Peter Linnap's Le Top 50, which is the main topic of this presentation. Peter Linnap is a photographer, teacher, researcher of Estonia, and he is teaching in Tartu. He has been professor there from 2001, head of photography department in school with the name University of Applied Sciences, Pallas. Very clumsy title and not very adequate, I would say. It's basically art school, art college. And in '94, he arranged exhibition Le Top 50, where he asked 50 prominent Western European art historian, artists, and important art personalities 3 questions. He sent them faxes, and he selected those persons through the journal Des Arts, some charts, and here are not all names. Names we were able to kind of recover with him together. And here is the example of the letter, and the 3 questions were 3 simple questions. Have you heard about a country called Estonia? If yes, possibly what? Have you heard anything about art in this country? Finally, could you just write or fax a single sentence or a couple with some wish to the Estonian artist? Can be whatever, but sincere. Your message will become part of the artwork and will be exhibited as well. I do ask to do exactly the same from all the 50 art prominents, the top 50. And naturally, he is a very ambitious person, and he just thought if people don't know anything about Estonia, then at least he knows that they will know that there is some fool or some kind of insane person as he wrote, conman or a genius who created this artwork, where he asked these questions. And exhibition looked like this, that the faces of prominent persons, and if they answered, then their answer was under that picture, and post boxes were under the picture, the typical Soviet post boxes, green ones, as you see on the picture. And what's interesting and very valuable from my point of view also is this openness of the artwork, because the audience or visitors could post messages to this person if they wanted.
It was a sort of mail art.
And here is just one example about answer by Jean-Christophe Mann. And the second question was about Estonian artists. Do you know something about it? But it's the beginning of the first answer is already quite grotesque. That Litauen Lithuania. I don't know much about Lithuania. The question was
More precise.
question was about Estonia, but this left image was taken a little bit later, exhibition where he had what he had the last year. And this is also from 2021, what he had in Palace Gallery in Tartu. So you see that where there are answers, then answer is also presented by the post mailbox. There were 13 answers altogether from 50, and percent was 26. Not a single art prominent artist included knew any fact, name, artwork about Estonian art. But I wouldn't say that it's sort of kind of wall of shame or anything. I think it's very natural. And the year was 94. It was before internet. It was probably very hard to get any knowledge about Estonia. But actually, I have seen even myself. I remember somewhere in the 90s, I saw one multimedia piece where Latvian and Lithuanian names were exchanged. So it's very typical, and especially because after the fall of Soviet Union, all these countries came out from nowhere. For instance, if I would ask you, do you know where is Dagestan, or where is even Chechnya, which is much more famous than probably many of us, or even myself, would be in trouble. But still, I checked where is Dagestan. So I know where it is. So, but as an epilogue of this project is an article of a student of Peter Linnap, which is published in Kunst EE, our journal, which is published four times in a year in Estonia. And the article with the title Hello World. And Kaisa Ehe is graduate from the photography department there, and she repeated the same experiment with 50 art institutions from Japan, Australia, and Brazil, and sent similar questions, but via email. And she didn't get any reply during the 2 months. So it was last year, sorry. And naturally, she was in that text, which is available in English, by the way. It's translated. This journal is bilingual. And she was discussing there what were the reasons. Maybe organizations are often represented by entry-level personnel, and they are selecting important and less important emails. Good intentions were identified as spam. Maybe in some organizations, the general email is probably never read, write-only address, and replying to the email just was not a priority of organization staff, or maybe some organizations were thinking just it's again some kind of fame-hungry artist who is sending this kind of harassing, or they felt maybe harassed by this kind of emails. And that's the end of my presentation, and this original article was published last year in the journal Philologica Estonica Tallinnensis. And thank you for your attention.
It's really super, Ivo, because it gives us a little bit of time. This is the moment to come back to this question that Richard also raised about the validity of the term East Europe or Eastern Europe, especially in relation to art in the first place. I think we all heard that you introduced yourself as somebody from Eastern Europe. I didn't think that we heard Richard say that.
I would say concerning that if kind of final, do we have any conclusion on the base of this, what I showed, then if where we are now, I think these questions which were in the beginning of 90s very important are not very relevant now anymore. Because this exhibition was, Linnart's exhibition was sort of kind of mirror where the guy wanted to be reflected, but naturally it was kind of partly sort of kind of joke as well. He enjoyed doing this exhibition. It was not kind of totally seriously made. And naturally, what's important to mention that it was sort of kind of a mirror image or kind of Estonian culture or art mirrored in the Western image and shown to Estonia back, and not only to the organizer of exhibition, but some people who were who had very kind of I would say kind of very narcissistic kind of position concerning what's the value of the local art, because Estonia has been from the 60s after this Khrushchev tour practically permanently kind of mentally connected with the Western art. Artists were copying or kind of being influenced by pop art, kinetic art, op art, the conceptual art, land art. In the 70s and 80s, there was a kind of big wave of hyperrealism, then different trends of painting in the 80s, and naturally later video art, naturally, in the beginning of 90s. So, and in that sense, I would say that I was the first who wrote the article about video art in Estonian language. It was published in 87. And so in a way, art historians or artists were always sort of kind of embracing, copying, or being influenced by different Western art forms. And so it means that everybody felt that we are already there, we are part of this kind of Western art language. But in the beginning of nights, one guy just shows you that you are nowhere, nobody sees you, nobody wants you, that you are invisible.
But can you respond to the Dutch Pavilion of Venice Biennial given to Estonia this year, and how this was perceived, in Estonia itself? Can you say something about that?
Yes, I visited Venice Biennale, yes, I saw it, and unfortunately, because of some power problems, it was not working properly. This kind of central installation was not working. I have seen this in functioning only on videos. That's the first minus, but the big plus is naturally that it was in Dutch Pavilion, because it's central and Giardini is most important area for Venice Biennale. And to criticize it, then I would say that there was too much tiny details and tiny kind of stories there. Naturally, it's maybe interest, but Venice Biennale, it's always kind of struggle with your time and with your attention. You're just as a human being, just not able to dive into all kind of details. So it's always too to present whatever you are presenting in the big sort of kind of chunks, pieces, pictures, or very few words, not kind of because otherwise you are just making the visitor sort of kind of blind, that she is not able to go through all these kind of material masses. And to be honest, it didn't resonate much with myself. I understand that there were some valuable ideas, but it's not much my taste. And actually, they didn't have catalog, which is very bad if you're promoting your artist and promoting your art.
But what would you say about the gesture? I mean,
Yeah,
how was that
that was
received?
the question.
Gesture.
The gesture of the Dutch to offer that space, you know, in the context of our discussions about East and West and about visibility, about marginalization.
Yeah, naturally, I admire it very much, absolutely. And this is the biggest plus, I would say, that this exhibition, that it was there in the central location. And it was, unfortunately, I was not present where different press conferences were given concerning that. But it's very valuable, absolutely. And I would say the very kind of the best example you can ever imagine, that it's some country which has much longer history in their, let's say, Giardini or Venice Biennale offers. And you can even imagine that maybe all other pavilions could be kind of reshared. So between the countries who are underrepresented or who doesn't have any kind of
Couldn't we say that this was a patronizing gesture? Because this was
what?
a patronizing gesture, because it was they invited a project which had to do with colonial period and with the Netherlands. I didn't like the idea, really. I have to tell you, I didn't like the exhibition. I totally agree with you. It's over narrative, and I think a book would have done more justice to the work of research, etc. But all I saw there was sort of a superficial and, you know.
On the point of being patronizing, Melenti also has a question in relation to the project by Peter Lina that you showed. And Melenti is asking, but why is the validation by major Western European curators, artists, or institutions so important?
Yes, it is important, but it is not. You know, it's important in the eyes of local, how to say, institutions who have power and people who have some kind of power positions or the position to decide something. If somebody is selected somewhere or mentioned or written about him, her, then it's kind of valuable. It's kind of hard currency or something. But among artists, I wouldn't say that it's so important, because the artists who are very conscious what's going on and who know what they are doing, they are trying to find their own way. But naturally, there are some resources under or in connection with people who have decision power, and that's the game. And naturally, if you think that the centrums are maybe not so important nowadays, or important kind of to have connections with important people or powerful people is not maybe so important, but I wouldn't agree with that, because as far as I have read, I don't remember exactly this article, it's sort of kind of cultural analytics article, where really kind of statistical data which showed that artists who were closer to the centrums or had tighter connections with the important people in the art life, in the cultural life, they had more visibility. It's sort of kind of statistical truth.
Yeah.
And there is the economy of it.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in Romania, you have artists who are having a local pool of collectors. They are fine. And you have the other artists who are not having a local pool of collectors, and then they're struggling to work internationally. That's very much to do with economics. Exactly as you say. I mean, you're close to the fireplace, you know. You can make your steak, so to speak. And it's funny because I'm looking, it's almost a joke. All young artists in Romania, including my students, their work language is English. All the titles are in English. All the explanation text, because you have conceptual art which you have to explain, are in English. And I constantly tell them, are you crazy? I mean, we are in Romania. You are showing whom are you talking to? It's stronger than them. And I think it's part of this projection that you have to be somewhere else.
Yeah, there's some phenomenon in Estonia as well. Not only titles of the works, but master thesis or doctoral thesis, or in Academy of Arts, for instance, like half, 50% are written in English or in Estonian. So, and even defended in English, and it's a very funny situation where Estonians are kind of participating in defense where Estonian is talking with Estonian in English. And there's only one maybe person who is English speaking, and that's the reason why they're talking in English. Yeah, please.
I have a question. How can you tell which one is artist is Estonian or not? I will tell you some event after.
Yeah, good question. Maybe it's not possible. If you take, if I know before already, then it's another thing. But from point of view of form or ways how they are working, they are completely internationalized now, and their art is also. From point of view of kind of methods or language of art, it has lost its, or it even didn't have maybe any kind of originality. Maybe only originality is in the content, in the subject, what they are kind of showing, talking there in their art.
Because I was working as a media artist, and in 2000 it was a year when the regime of Milosevic fell down. There was a Yugoslav Biennale of Young Artists, and they also invited artists from the region. And they introduced two art awards, one for local artists and one for international. But it was a complete chaos, and at the end they made it like a spectacle from the 70s. They opened it up, so from the 100 exhibitors, they grew up in 2 days to 200 exhibitors. Nothing was signed, so you do not actually know what you are looking at. And the jury was coming, and we got a prize as international artists, as Slovenians. And it was written on Latin, so it was not even written in English. It was a medical project, it was written in Latin. So it's all, everywhere is written on Latin.
Always ultimately Lithuanian, so I don't mind.
I think we have to thank Raivo here for the presentation. Thank you very much. And I'd like to invite Diana. Nezinkova from Prague.
Yes, you had quite a good pronunciation of that.
Thank you.
I will just have my notes here and the presentation up here.
It's already there?
Yeah.
Let's see, then it should be just
Yes, here in between.
in between this one.
Mm-hmm.
And we are here already in the Zoom. Get this a bit more here so it's easier for you to reach.
Okay.
Will we just start?
Yes.
Can we not go full screen today? Oh, we can.
So hello you all. My presentation is going to be about the theme in between peripheral. I'm going to talk about Latvian female artists of Millennial Generation and the phenomenon of Soviet nostalgia. And the presenters before me touched a lot of topics that I also involved in my research. But I'm coming from this position of a Millennial Generation. I haven't lived through it. I just know it from, I don't know what was actually happening during the time. I just know it from the memories of my parents and my grandparents. And that's why I decided to actually start to research this topic. I'm originally from Czech Republic. I live in Prague. But I fell in love into Latvia 6 years ago, and since then I've been researching this field. It's super complicated. It's super complicated because of the Latvian location. I don't think that we need to discuss it because it has been discussed a lot before I came. But the situation of the Millennial Generation, in my point of view, it's super similar. We are somewhere in between the boomers and the Generation X, which raised us, and the Generation Z, which are now just coming up. For this generation, when I'm talking to them, and I'm year 96, but when I'm talking to someone who is just 4 years younger, for them it's so super far away. And I'm not talking just about the Latvian context, it's the whole context of Eastern or Central Europe, let's say. And this is where I find the key of nostalgia so super important, because we are longing to something, and let's not mix it up. The nostalgia, in my point of view, it doesn't mean good, but it doesn't mean a bad thing. It's just something. I haven't found a proper word, so I'm using the word nostalgia. And I feel that the Millennial Generation in the contemporary art scene, that we are kind of like stuck in between this what we are raised in and what is gonna be the future. And when the 24th February of this year came, and I was asking myself a question, and what will happen now? Because throughout, let's say, last 10 years, the whole nostalgic connotations in contemporary art scene, in this context of the Latvian female generations, female artists of Millennial Generation, there were those kind of like the aesthetics, connotations, the whole retro style was super popular in popular culture, let's say music, all this post-Soviet stuff. But what will happen with this aesthetics and this approach now when we have the war just next to us? I put some keywords which are important for my research, because I'm just basically at the beginning. And I'm at the beginning, but I feel that I'm also in the end because of the war situation at the moment. Of course, we need to talk about the nostalgia. What is it, and how it relates with the Latvian female artists of this Millennial Generation. I will tell this a lot, and I found out that it's so super much tied to the whole national identity, which was growing and building during the Soviet era. And this is what has been tied to us millennials through our parents and grandparents. Because if you are building all the huge and concrete stuff inside the cities, in, let's say, Riga, Riga's awesome wooden architecture was torn down, and all these constructivism houses were built. Let's talk about the concept of heritage, tangible and intangible, where it's coming from. But if you are tearing apart the heritage which has been before, let's say the whole Latvian folklore, which has been tied within the last part of 19th century, when the Latvian national reborn was happening, tied to all the folklore, all the symbols, all the mythology. But then the Second World War came, all the Nazi and situation, all the Soviet situation, and then you have 40 years in between, and then crazy 90s comes with the whole transformational era. Where is this heritage? What's the heritage? The collective imagination is for sure another term, and this is something which belongs with the whole social construct. Where is this collective imagination coming from, and how it's tied to these millennial artists? Because this is something we are just, it's something we are creating, it's something we are raising our kids, or my generation, let's say, will raise our kids. Will we use this imagination that we've been raised in? And will this imagination change now when there's this war, and my generation is actually living through the war? I decided to show you 4 artists, just to have a quick review whom I've been researching and what are the terms. Because as I said, this nostalgia is the whole construct. So there's something within the visuality, there's something within the theme that we might have a feeling, or now we might have a feeling that during the Soviet era, or let's say during the socialism in my country, in Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia before, that we lived better life. Someone can have this feeling, but is it true? That's this whole collective imagination. So Evita Vasila, for example, works a lot with architecture, urbanism, and the whole childhood in the city where she grew up, because when she was growing up in beginning of 90s and late 80s, she basically grew up on a construction. There were all unfinished buildings because everything just stopped, and the transformation 90s came. So she works, for example, with that, and it's super significant in her work. Then Vika Eksta is the second one. She works so much with the pop culture and the stereotypes. This is, for example, a series she did after she got inspired or used the appropriation of Cinder Sherman. This is tied to Latvian TV divas. We all know these divas that were during the 80s and then beginning of 90s, let's say. Even though they were in TV, they are beautiful, they were sexy, they were singing, and she's playing with this image of perfection. But is it a perfection, or was it good? I think that we could have endless conversation about that. If we talk about Eva Kraule-Kuna, she's mostly playing with the whole visuality and aesthetics and the social narratives as well. But she's transferring the aesthetics into something hype, into something cool, similar as when we say in the music industry, within this kind of like the cool post-Soviet eras, the Gopnik styles, and we can see it in whole Eastern Europe, in Balkan, in Estonia, and for sure as well in Russia. And this is something which has been quite popular, as I was telling, now for the past 10 years. And I couldn't be more curious what's going to happen with this visuality after this year. But we still don't know. This is something which, as Eva is working, it's mostly something which is kind of pretty and can touch you. That's why I decided to show you Christina Mazziare work, and which is super different. She used photography, and she really shows this post-Soviet society within the heritage of the past, tangible and intangible, because this is what the real heritage of the past looks like in nowadays Latvia. And we are not in the context of Riga now, because it's still the city, it's still growing. So if you come, for example, when I came 6 years ago, it was still a little bit different Riga, but it was city, European city, Eastern Central European city, let's say. But when I came to the countryside, I was shocked, literally, because this is the European Union, and this is how it really looks. And this is something that it's so important to talk about, and that, we can say that this is cool, this is hype, but this is the truth. Okay. I don't want to get lost in this theme, so I put some questions in there, because everything what led me here during my research was basically that I was getting more and more questions, and it's endless, of course. But I want to put these 5 and then the last 6 one within the context of nostalgia. Are we nostalgic because we are looking for safety in the past? I feel that this is something which is so significant for the millennial generation, and it doesn't have to be in Latvia. It's the whole Eastern society, or maybe maybe it's even the West. I don't want to dig in there, but I feel that the safety is something I can relate to this whole visuality of the second part of the 20th century. And I don't care if it was bad or good, because I go to my grandma's and I see all those things which reminds me of her, and she's telling me, I got this in 70s, I got this in 90s, I got this there, and I went to buy through this shop for bonds, which I got at work, and I didn't have the money. You all can relate, I guess. So, but I'm longing to it because it's a safe place within the national identity. Why is the identity itself so important for our society and for ourselves? There has been a lot of these topics tied to it said today, but if I ask myself if I identify as a woman, if I identify as a person from Czech Republic, or as a European, or as someone who is from Eastern Europe, or from Central Europe, or from the world, I don't know. For me, it's like I'm fine with all of these things. But is it good that I'm fine with all of these things? I don't know. So it's, again, endless questions. Within the concept of heritage, what is more permanent, tangible or intangible? Can we destroy the tangible heritage, and then if we destroy the permanent thing, will this intangible feeling of such building, let's say, will it disappear? If now, after the war, the monument which has been on the other side of Daugava has been torn down. It was a monument of the Russian victory after the Second World War. But everyone will remember that the monument was there. Everyone will know. I was telling it to my friend, and she was here visiting me 6 years ago, and I was just telling her, like, you know, they torn apart this, and she was like, oh my God, I remember, I have those pictures of it because it was so huge, and we were having the conversation, but it's 6 years ago, and she still remembers that we just went around it. That's a huge question for me, and a huge question in the context of contemporary artists. Collective imagination. I was talking about it before a bit, but is it an equal or fading of negative memories? Are we just, of course, that's what we do as humans, that we are pushing away the negative stuff. But isn't it important to talk about these bad things and talk about it for mostly for the next generations? Because this is my own personal opinion, but as I see that my friends are raising their kids, they are not telling them bad stuff. They are telling them just good stuff. And they are not telling them, don't do this, you will fall down. They are not even letting them to fall down. So this is what I'm worried. That's why I feel that the Millennial Generation has such power in our hands, but we can fail so much in this way. And then the last one, the social construct, did we create a false history to calm ourselves down? I believe that we are doing it, and we are doing it so. It's so easy to do it, but yeah, it's just we need to have more power, not to calm ourselves down. And the last question, and I don't have even an idea what will happen, so I can't answer it. But what will happen with these nostalgic aspects within this Latvian or overall Eastern contemporary art scene in the future, with the context of the Ukraine war, which is still happening at the moment? I don't know, but I think that we will not know next year. We might know what's gonna actually really happen just in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Diana, for throwing up those questions and putting them in such a way. Raza, please.
Yes. Thank you so much. This is so unusual to hear reflection from non-Latvian about Latvian art. And it actually helps so much because suddenly you can see all new scene. I just can answer some of your questions, and maybe also for the audience who don't know that Victor, for example, those who have been in occupation museum, you know, but victory for Second World War here means occupation of Latvia. So this monument for us, I was physically suffering always because I had to bring my child always for training, so find it, next to it. And I was really like, when this ship will be taken down, it's huge, it was the biggest one in Baltic. And we succeeded to do it. We took this monument down just one day before a beautiful letter from United Nations came. You are not allowed to take it down because many people in this country will be unhappy about it. So we just did it. So this is the first time when Latvians were not slow but fast enough. Then the other thing, which is really big, we just had 3 days ago elections. Yeah, and 1st of October we elected a new government of Latvia. Well, before the votes were counted in Riga, we were thinking that we are lost because of rural regions, and this suddenly you showed it so nicely through the art, what is happening. And so actually it's very dangerous politically not to invest in infrastructure of the rural regions, because they all vote, they all were voting for the most corrupted party of Latvia or Russian parties, and the general notion what journalists were delivering back was, so they believe that the Latvian government at the moment is really doing everything just to destroy Latvia. That's their one idea. But we have a good government. I'm really proud of this government. So for first time for many years, and actually they won the most of them at the moment. And the second notion was that Putin didn't do anything bad to me. Means nothing wrong he does. That whole region of Latvian are thinking like this in the rural places. And this you can see from almost from this one last picture by Christina Mazziare, which you showed. And then the third thing, I think, what will happen, I think it will change a lot, this Latvian art scene of nostalgia, because when the international, for example, also experts come to give awards to Purvītis Prize, for example, the national, then what they expect, then they award, of course, those post-Russian works, yeah, so that there are these stories about war port, and even us, we have been working with this, like a glorification a little bit, about something secret past of radio telescope and war port, and Scrum the signal, all those, those conspiracy, stuff was so exciting together with French artists who are even deeper into this conspiracy stuff. So it has been really quite fun, and I really think this will change. So I totally would be interested in a 5 years event to see how you follow these changes, because I think we will think twice. Even I was very much against all this type of idealization or nostalgia. But even me, myself, kind of, that maybe Western people expect this type of art, Maybe you will become more successful if you will do this, because of course nobody knows Estonian and Latvian art.
Yeah, but because it's kind of like this mythology even, or almost mythology of the...
No, thanks, it was really great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Your last question with the calming down, I didn't really understand. Can you elaborate a little bit about
Which last question you mean?
in your summary at the end, the social construct, did we create a false history to calm ourselves
To
down?
calm ourselves down?
And that sounds interesting, but I couldn't understand. I didn't understand.
Oh yeah, yeah. The false history. That's what I feel that the collective imagination is creating. That let's say it on this example that we can have this feeling, or let's say, I will say it on example of my grandfather. He was always super anti-communist. He was doing all these strikes and samizdat and all those stuff. And now we have a political party which is left-winged, super tied to what was happening in Czech Republic during the socialism, and he was voting this guy because he just somehow feels that before it was better, but before he was against that, which is something that I found that's this fading. Of course, he knows that it was super bad, but he's just not. He was young at that time, He was having this great life, basically, having those cars, cheap apartment, good job, and he's having all those things now. He's having better life now, but he's 80. He was 40 at the time, And this is something that I find in this calming ourselves down through the past, that this is all this aesthetics. Everything in the shops was looking the same. Everything in the magazine was looking the same. You didn't have the choice, and now within my generation, it looks cool. I'm wearing what my mom was wearing during 80s, but she was wearing it because she didn't have any other option. That was what you could buy. And now for me, it looks cool because, you know, I'm relating it to something. So the calming ourselves down is basically for me picking up something which was good in the past and just forgetting all those bad stuff, like all this politics. And did I answer your question? I think that I took it like on different points of view, but yeah, it's more. The idea is that we are just longing for the good stuff. So we are calming ourselves.
There's a question back there.
No, I just added selective memory.
Oh yes, selective memory. Thank you. That's
Yes.
the right word.
Just a little bit. Is there a significant difference between Latvian and Czechoslovakian art?
Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And Slovakia.
You actually wrote
Yeah, I know. It's fine. There is, for me, the Latvian art is more narrative overall, and as I see, there is always.
I mean, in the cases you mentioned.
Yeah, like Czech art in this point of view, for me, it's kind of easier and self-explanatory, and Latvian one, it's more narrative, and it would be a long discussion about this, but it's really tied to this whole Latvian national identity because what I found out is that Latvians always had to put themselves on the map and kind of always needed to explain everyone their piece or their place in the world on this map. And within the Czech Republic, we are on better terms when it comes to this. Yes.
Jana, thank you very much for this very engaging talk. Geert, take us into the present.
Yeah. You're already in the Zoom. Gewoon het hele scherm. Ja, hele top. This will go really quick. There's something that needs to be done. Zoom permission to share the screen. Click on reopen. We will leave the meeting and log this again. Now we go back to Zoom.
Oh, that's signal.
Sorry, the signal is also the blue one.
Yeah.
I will open it very quickly.
Yeah.
Open everything in Zoom.
Ja.
Move it over en dan scherm daar. Dat moet dus wel, ik zet geluid helemaal uit. Dat is op één. En dan kijken we achter ons.
En dan
En dan kan je die nog kleiner maken. Je kan het echt minimaliseren.
helemaal weg.
Nee, dit is het kleinste wat je kan. Zoom is erg, dat precies zo bij.
Ja.
Thank you. All right. Yes, I think Geert doesn't need introduction. I'm very happy that he can be here. And his name has been mentioned several times because it's been a long time that he's been involved in projects both in Central and Eastern Europe, speaking geographically, and in the West. And I think he's now on to something very current, so he needs his time.
Welcome. It's a real honor, and I'm very, very happy to be here. So I'm excited. It's very important for me personally, and for the work we're doing now. I want to say something about the term because I think I wanted to pick up on the discussion before about Eastern Europe and the critique of that. Of course, this is why we came up with the term Deep Europe to start with, right? This critique of the thinking in kind of old-fashioned, not only East-West divisions, but to think in terms of countries and these kinds of geopolitical approaches, of course, goes back a long time.
I think we can date it.
Yeah, we can date it.
1997.
Yeah, I know.
Workspace.
Yes, exactly, and the preparations for that, because when the project ran in the Orangerie in the summer of '97, before that, we already worked with the term, so it must have been discussed and invented somewhere in the spring of '97. But of course, the term when we invented it was deeply ironic, and it was meant like that. It was not meant like deep emotions or deep feelings. Nowadays, of course, we would inevitably read it different when you think of deep state or deep fake, for that matter, right? So it has a different connotation today. But in general, I would say, these days I think of Deep Europe as a stack in the Benjamin Bratton sense of the word, namely that it's layered. And Lucizar already used that term, and I really like it. It has layered identities, layered histories, layered utopias, layered contemporary art practices, approaches to media, and so on. So the layeredness of the stack called Deep Europe is important, and that is a horizontal one, and it differs from it's a vertical one, and it differs from the horizontal approach, which would be the classical East-West division, and so on, right? Of course, there is an element in there that everybody can be, a member of Deep Europe. So in that sense, it was already mentioned that it's an invitation also for others, and we have already heard that before, even with contributions from New Zealand and Australia, etc. Right? So that is significant. However, there is a big difference, I think, between then and today. And in my work of the last several years, I have tried, without nostalgia, without looking back too much, to see why, for instance, Syndicate today, even with another name, is no longer there, right? And this has to do with the demise of the networks and the rise of the platforms. For young people, there are no more networks. They are active on the platforms, right? And this morning I had to rush out. I was very sorry that I couldn't really attend the breakfast, but I had to give a big class for the students here, and to explain that and to share with them these feelings that we have and that I explore in my recent work, right? First in the book Sad by Design, and now in my recent work Stuck on the Platform, right? So, and this we massively encounter this kind of platform capitalism that
kind of, really affects the work that we do as activists, as artists, in the work that we do, the solidarity work that we do with people in Ukraine that are in part still there in Ukraine, but of course many of them have left. They live in Warsaw, in Berlin, and everywhere. Also here, I heard there's 40,000 here in Latvia alone. In the Netherlands, 80,000, and so on and so on, right? Okay, so I want to say something here about, what are the syndicate conditions today? And on the one hand, we have an enormous amount of real-time, very, very fast, tools, social media. The situation could in fact not be better if we compare it to the difficult early days in early 90s or something like that. But on the other hand, it doesn't really move into self-organization and into the creation of these personal encounters. Maybe also, we had COVID, yes, and that made it much more difficult in the last couple of years to come together. And we have already seen that, maybe you remember, in the uprisings in Belarus, and the difficulties we already had then, which was all happening during COVID, to organize the solidarity and, we couldn't go there, where to meet, everything was virtual. It was quite difficult, right? So there is also a certain unfamiliarity, both for us, the older generations, but also for younger ones, to organize solidarity bottom up in the current platform condition. All right. Okay, this initiative that I'm showing got into being in early March in Amsterdam. It consists of 20 organizations in Amsterdam, primarily in the Netherlands. And it kind of builds on the situation early 90s when we started the Press Now support campaign for independent media. And in part, they are the same people. We got together very quickly and started to organize the solidarity work from, let's say, our scene, which means independent media, media art scene, and so on and so on, the cultural organizations. Okay, so this is what we came up with, and we've been running that until the summer. I've been primarily involved in setting up this blog, and I'm particularly proud that I work together with Svetlana Matvidenko, who is still in Ukraine, a curator, Canadian. She is based in Vancouver, but moved back temporarily to care for her old parents. And she found, herself in the midst of the war because she was there late February. And I worked with her on a number of occasions. Maybe you've heard about her name. She has, in 19, for instance, published a book on cyber warfare. Okay, so we are publishing her diaries. And that was and also we had some artists from Lviv and others. Also, I want to mention here, and I want to show it to you. What is this? Go away. Why is this there?
It's always there.
Yeah, but no, I can't click on this.
But you can move the. You can move all of this.
Can you move it down? Okay. No, it's good. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I want to talk also a little bit about the support campaign for the Kiev Biennale, and I want to mention them here because they're quite special. Of course, there are many art organizations throughout the country. I happened to attend and participate in the Kiev Biennale in late 19, so just before COVID. So that was an incredible experience already back then, completely dominated, of course, by the war. I was very, very moved. I really felt the war already back then, right, in the late 19th. So this is well before, of course, February 24, 22. Okay, so a lot of organizations are involved in the support of them. Part of them are, of course, still in Kiev. Part of them are outside, and they are really quite important players. But we're not really networked in the sense they are doing this from Kiev and from other places. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anyone here who have worked with Kiev Biennale or knows them or no? Okay. They're very active and very good group. And then what we did is at the end, just before the summer, we put together a publication, Tactical Media Reflection and Responses, in which we tried, to look at different forms of organization, solidarity. Also, from the hackers' perspective, there's a big group throughout Europe with the center in Slovenia. That, for instance, caters for hardware support of ISPs that are being knocked out, right? So this is very concrete hardware support, because if the hardware is hit, the whole infrastructure is out. So this is a very concrete, let's say, example of help that is currently underway. Okay, how exactly at the moment this campaign unfolds? It's a little bit unknown. I find it very interesting to see that the Ukrainians are quite well organized, and that our focus is in fact shifting to the Russians and support of Russian opposition people who come. In Amsterdam, we now have the base of both the Moscow Times and a couple of other opposition websites. And they came there and they set up shop. Everybody's there, all the journalists, their families, etc. Right? So they are running from Amsterdam, and there's a lot of other kind of Russian dissidents and people who are fleeing the country. This is of course different from the current discussion that you are here also entertaining out of the Baltic states, whether we should support the young Russians that are now fleeing because they have to go into the army, right? I mean, that's another discussion. Are they cowards or not? Should we see them as heroes or as cowards? And should we no longer support the cowards that are now leaving? I mean, this is really not. Although I find it interesting, and I'm quite interested to hear from the Latvians here what you make of this, because this is coming to us as a Latvian idea. Like, okay, kick out the cowards. We don't want them. They should organize the Russian Revolution at home, right? This is and this is a kind of a I don't know if this is a meme or a rumor, but this is kind of an idea that at the moment circulates in Western media. But we have a very different experience with the Russians that are arriving at the moment. For instance, in Netherlands, and we think that to work with them is absolutely the key of the key. Why not go to the source of the problem, right? So this is an important discussion. We already had that discussion. We stopped thinking like, okay, let them come, let's say, to the West and then sit at a table and then they can sort it out, and here's the place for the Belarusians, and then they can talk to the Russians, and here are the Ukrainians, and then they can make peace together. This kind of peace approach we always criticized. We said that's naive. This is not the task of solidarity work, right? This is not what we want. The fact that they may meet each other at some places, this is almost inevitable, right? But that's about it. The task of our campaigns is not to bring back harmony, in the former Soviet Union or something like that. Okay, so that's been said because a lot of the discussions are in fact, going back to that issue, because so we need to express it. We need to take quite a firm stand in this. Otherwise, we cannot move on, and we cannot, for instance, explain why we think that supporting the Russian opposition at the moment is of pivotal importance. Okay.
I can give you 5 minutes.
Yeah. I want to say something bit more because I have also done a little bit more, of course, historical work about the period, and I have to say that my next book will be my memoirs of 90s, and one of the chapters in that is, of course, the whole Eastern Europe, my approach there. I lived in Romania and in Hungary and worked in many countries in that period. So I am actively, involved in the writing, in collecting materials and reliving maybe also a lot of the time then. So in a good and bad way. But very concretely, sometimes, because I'm certainly not the only one who is now kind of bringing together, the bits and pieces of 30 years ago. So luckily there are a lot of meetings like this happening. And I want to mention one quite concretely, and that is an exhibition about the Soros Contemporary Art Center network itself. And it's called The Influencing Machine, organized by the Los Angeles curator Aaron Milton. And he has organized this exhibition 2 times already. So it started in his own Galleria Nicodim in Bucharest in the spring of 19, and then a second, much larger edition of this history of the SCCA. What happened in the quite dubious, as you know, Jozdowski Castle in Warsaw. So that was a very strange place. I have to admit, to be there and to go to this place, and because maybe you all know who the current curator is, the history, of that place. We can talk about it a long time, but anyway, in that place at the moment, this exhibition happened. The opening was late June of this year in 2020. And there is also an exchange here. The Soros Center was a perfect machine, an exchange between him and me. So that was published already in 19 in Art Margins. And I have also a second, more detailed interview and exchange with him that will appear in a little while. If you're interested, I can send them to you. I sent them also to Andreas. This is the website of the Warsaw event. I don't know how many have seen this show in Warsaw. I'm the only one. Okay. Okay. Now, of course, it was very odd. If you happen to know Aaron Milton, he's a very strange person. So anyway, for instance, there's a very curious video in it. He went all the way to the West Coast to interview Susie. Oh no, to East Coast. She lives upstate New York. Yeah, and he went to see Susie Mazziare, and he made half an hour video about with her about her life basically. Turns out that in the whole video there's maybe 1 minute mention of the Source Contemporary Art Network. I can't even remember which detail, but not a very important one. And all the rest is just about her Buddhist meditation practice. So it's a film just about that. And then you are sitting there, you are watching, and there are some quite interesting. He has in the second edition he made some interesting. Let's say info visuals where all the centers were, etc. So the research that he's been doing with his team has made a little bit of progress. There was one big room in the museum with a lot of the documents and clean photos of you and all the others.
You.
Yeah.
I'm really.
Yeah.
Aaron Milton put me in his show.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of kind of more so evidence.
What's the aim of the whole thing? Because I saw the exhibition in Bucharest. I have no clue what he wanted.
No, that's also after seeing 2 shows of him, I'm still at the same point. This is completely mysterious. There is a certain part of it definitely is let's say without going too deep into it. There's a conspiratorial element in his story about the Soros, the CIA.
I think it's a show by Viktor Orban.
Yeah.
It's just one small element in that whole big project of his.
Yeah.
One small.
Yeah. Of course. Also, but he has also shown some interesting work. Luchesar has there are some artists from the Syndicate network that participated both in the Bucharest and the Warsaw show, who have excellent works that deal with this. So when you're there, you're really confused because it's a really mixed bag. You have no idea what this guy really wants. Also in the Warsaw show, there's a few very interesting, completely contemporary works, right, with no reference whatsoever to the 90s.
In Bucharest too.
And Bucharest as well. Yeah, so then you're sitting there, okay, this is about the history, but what are these works doing there? So I'm just saying. Yeah.
Why is it important? Tell us.
Why? Because this is quite a large attempt to write the history and to collect materials about the Soros Contemporary Art Network, which I think is a very important backbone when we're talking about 90s, and also when we're talking about Syndicate, which I would say was a network that at least in part was built on top or in relation with the centers or with the artists that were active around different.
Maybe he tries to close the subject, Mr. Milton. Because this is, a very solid part of Central Eastern Europe, if I dare say that, in the 90s, 2000s, and here comes a nobody who has no expertise whatsoever, and he's making apparently a big survey of this phenomenon. So, end of story.
Yeah, that is true. By the way, I just wanted to show this is the website of the first show, right? So
the show in Bucharest.
Yeah, this is the show in Bucharest.
I'm totally sorry, but
no. Yeah, I understand my time is up. So thank you very much.
Stephen?
Short 3-minute break before we go. 3-minute break. So there is one little detail. We have to would be nice if we finish at least 5 minutes before 9.
Yes,
Because the
no,
restaurant is closed at 11. We will be passing around. There is just meat, fish, and vegetarian choices. You just mark which one we will order. So at 9, so we have food.
Okay. Maybe then this, as the things are being rearranged, is a good moment to say that I'm going to skip my talk. So it's not the right moment for what I prepared. And so Stephen will now be the last one. And we will see whether we need a moment of reflection after that. So I think we are safe. I will put it on the screen here, but I will first make sure. Well, I will think about how to develop this into something, but it's not the right time. Yeah, but I think, no, circumstances are good. It's okay. This would be strange.
No, we are in Zoom.
We already had Zoom on there.
Yeah,
That's why everything
just hides itself in its.
Please don't skip.
I think we will start here.
Okay.
Oh, is this for you?
That's great. Yeah, so it's just the arrows, right?
It's left and right. I think even up and down might also work.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, folks, here's Ivo, please.
Source is always a big discussion, right?
We'll discuss in half an hour in a restaurant.
Yes, I think in half an hour you can pick all of this up in the restaurant. Now to another hero since the 90s, Stephen. I think you're going to take us into the present as well, aren't you?
Rather.
Yes. Yes. No, so
let's end with the present.
Let's end in the present. That would be really nice. Let's end with the beginning.
Okay.
Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andreas, and also very big thank you to Raza for this wonderful invitation that I jumped at immediately.
Yes, you were the first one to respond in 5 minutes.
I did, exactly. It's not the next 5 minutes, it's the last 5 minutes. And no, it's really, it's a wonderful pleasure to be back here and to step back into a world that I still very, very much love with old friends and new friends. It's really super and a great honor to be here. So thank you very much. As some of you know me from a certain context, my work today is very similar to a sense to the things that I was doing in the 90s, not just those Trananian and things after, like Trans-European Picnic, V2, Transmediale, all those things. Always concerned about scenarios of social transformation. So I run an organization right now. I'm co-director of an organization called the Rogue Agency for Open Culture and Critical Transformation. So in the work that I deal with, I'm confronted, although it is a very different context, with a lot of the aspects, the theories, the scenarios of work that we were confronted with in our Deep Europe context. Today we talk a lot about phenomena of hate speech, online incitement to violence in conflicts, about hoaxes and threats, about the scenario of deep fake. And I've always felt very comfortable with the term Deep Europe to kind of describe myself and our community, but I have a lot of problems with a number of terms that tend to pop up sometimes. Excuse me. Here, you've got the watch running there. Okay, cool, thank you. And one of these terms that I didn't really quite understand was Web 2.0. Like, what does that mean? I thought we were already in like Web 30 or something when that came along. Smartphone, another kind of weird term. Deep fake, or even fake news, I found confusing. Anyhow, I was interested when this event came up. I thought I'm really keen about exploring what is the world, what is the landscape that's deeper than fake. Like, is that a place that we can enter into? And I work with a number of people who deal with developing bots and AI systems on social media influencers, about tracking them, about thwarting their actions online. And I asked them about this like if we had a term, what is deeper than fake to you? And this is in context of a project that I would.
Excuse me?
It's really hard to think when people are talking.
Nina, it's really, sorry.
So
you have to do it some other time, or you have to do it in quiet. But it's really hard.
Yeah,
Christina is now the last one. Please.
Yeah, just the acoustics in here are very, very good. So anyhow, so I wanted to present a student work. I have the opportunity to teach a course in international media cultures where we develop media cultural prototypes. And there was a project that we just had. I mean, one of my students, which quite blew my mind. I won't name her name. We'll just call her Manuela, or Manu. She's from Russia, but her background is in different parts of former Soviet territory. I was going to show this project. Actually, I was gonna pop it in on Net Time in February, shortly after she presented it at the school. I thought this is really relevant to the situation going on, and I was actually going to do this on the 24th of February. And yeah, well, you know, things in the world changed. My life changed. I was actually in a South Sudanese refugee settlement in northern Uganda on the border to South Sudan when February 24th happened. And I felt oddly safer there than all of a sudden I did if I would have been in Berlin. Like, it was a very, I don't know, uneasy moment. So I refrained from showing Manu's project, but I thought this is the right place to show it. But first, just a couple of ideas about this notion of deeper than fake. Where do we end here?
Well, if you go on to quarter two, that's
right. Okay, good. So I asked a bunch of colleagues of mine who live and work in different parts of the planet and who deal with these issues of constructed realities or non-realities. And one of them was an AI developer called Dan in Kenya, in Nairobi. And he said, well, you know, deeper than fake. Yeah, this is being highly invested on non-original image or video, created to manufacture a consensus or shape or feed into an opinion. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. If it comes to it, to be bound to be deepest, it will only depend on whose hands the truth falls into, just like lethal weapons. So how societies are slow to equally invest in mainstream counter technology to decipher the fakes, which is what we're trying to do. But like most East African countries, we'll only legally react when these fakes affect the political class, instead of setting up and constitutionally funding robust anti-fake units that report to the general mass. So this is a very political issue in a lot of places. Manuela, who's the author of this project, she said, well, it's not only about art or of spreading numerous fakes, but also the agenda of the last 20 years and the obsessions with the idea that, and quote, your grandparents gave their lives 77 years ago, so now it's your turn. To create something that is deeper than fake, government all the time appeals to the idea of giving a moral debt to the country. So deeper than fake equals disinformation combined with the rewriting of history. So Putin often gives a lecture during his speeches before announcing something, for example, and appeals to the moral ties of Russian people. In a nutshell, the idea behind efficient propaganda is that it's always been tough to be Russian, but we are strong and we need to demonstrate it to the insolent Western world by any means. So anyways, one other colleague of mine, looking at it from a different perspective, he's a data analyst from the Philippines. He's a political asylum seeker who was basically hunted down by the Duterte regime in the Philippines, and he's a student now in Canada who works with us. He said, I watched a play last week called Barvenok, a play inspired by the experiences of the playwright's grandparents who fled to Ukraine in World War II, and by the true accounts of people who were interviewed in conflict zones in eastern Ukraine. There was a line in the play that goes like this: the whole purpose of Russia's fake news propaganda is to baffle people, to forestall people from differentiating true from false, and make them hit their heads on the wall trying. The scene where the line was thrown out in the play was when the two sisters were fighting over whether the Russian government was telling the truth or not. So historical revisionism, from my colleague from the Philippines, is deeper than disinformation itself. It is as if the next level of fake. It does not just divide and rule, nor maim the activists. It does not just divide and rule, nor maim the activists and academes. It defiles the honor of heroes who have sacrificed and continue to sacrifice their lives for the very people who spread disinformation about them. So it was kind of interesting. So maybe it's something we can research and study. Anyways, because I want to get on to this wonderful project by Manu, Speak Out, Speak Digital. So this is a student who she's in a master's program. She worked for a Russian antivirus company, so she's a coder. She's not an artist, but she felt that by creating a certain language of digital art, she can create kind of a code with which to support people who are trying to speak critically against the regime in Russia. So this project was presented on February 14th this year, on Valentine's Day. Anyhow, Speak Out, Speak Digital is the title, obviously. And she says, well, let's just imagine, you live in a dictatorship. Little Russian flag. All opposition politicians are persecuted. Freedom of speech is constrained by the law. People are afraid of showing their political opinion. And your salary is only enough for basic needs. But you do not agree with the regime and you want changes. So what are you going to do? Asks this student. Well, you've got some options. Protest? Game over. No. You get beaten by the police, dismissed, arrested, or sentenced. Well, show some opinion online. Oh, game over. No. Arrested or sentenced, listed as a terrorist or a foreign agent. Well, get media support. Game over. You're listed as a foreign agent and you're overseen by the police. So that's us here, right? Okay. Yeah, you. The guy laughing in the corner, right?
He was laughing the loudest.
Oh yeah, the one who laughs loudest laughs last, right? Anyways, she comes up with this wonderful notion of stealth resistance. So again, she's not an artist, but yeah, interesting. So her abstract is that the ideas are elusive and can be read in different ways. The notions that we're talking about, they're going to be metaphorical. So they get right to the point and express unspoken things. And we have to make something that is fast spreading through portable devices and trustworthy platforms that are available for everybody. So just a little caveat before the next slide. I don't work for any of the companies that are coming up in the next slides. It's just a one course project. So For Manu, stealth language is digital art. Digital art can become a voice of freedom and unite the people for a bigger social change. But what would the platform for such change be? Okay, so. Oh, we're not there yet. Okay, so the platform has to be hard to block. It's prepared for the new tricks of Russian law. It has to be accessible from all kinds of devices, and it needs to provide a mechanism for legal support because you're going to end up in court somewhere. It's got to be flexible. It has to be developer friendly. It has to have an infrastructure, open source, multimedia, so users can create different forms of content, and it has to be available on cloud storage to preserve the content, not necessarily a Google cloud or a proprietary cloud, preferably not. Well, here it is. Telegram, like I said, I'm not an agent of any of these companies, but for Manu, Telegram has quite interesting potential powers, and she's very serious about this notion. Because Telegram is experienced in avoiding the blocking and fighting prosecution. Servers are not in Russia, accessible from a browser, streaming video, blah, 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 big cloud storage, #1 messenger in Russia, installing lots of devices all over the place. But most importantly, it has a very good infrastructure for chat bots. And it even has some symbolic meaning. So this is her project. It's the prototype. Is a Telegram-based art bot built on the principles of machine learning, which is another and I think better expression for artificial intelligence, which is designed to transform multimedia documentary content into works of art. So this is how it works. We create an artificial intelligence or machine learning black box and develop a Telegram chat bot that develops artistic designs by learning the brand info. It can replace a human at every stage of creating an identity and designs unique pieces, I think she meant pieces of art, which compare existing visuals. So she's using an example of what she considers as kind of a digital artwork by a designer, which she would imagine as being encoded with the language of opposition figures. Yeah? And how they can put this. So once this stealth platform is developed, she needs to enlist the support of like-minded people and organizations, including other organizations, online distribution, word of mouth, Telegram channels, local politicians' platforms, data collection, the uses of product during the protests, court hearings, and mass detentions, and then preservation and processing, because we're preparing for cyber attacks and data leakages, so be forewarned. So how would this work? How would this be used? Well, she envisions an online space, which is kind of like a digital art exhibition. She wants to create a public space, which is outside of the realm of kind of like normal discourse and public protest. It's harder to shut down because of the distributed server system. There's this artificial intelligence generated art, which doesn't show the banned content. It just processes it artistically. Visitors will see the documentary. It gives shots that the government hides by interpreting the artificial intelligence art. And it will have a real agenda. So an exhibition which builds a true image of the political situation through a crowd. And this exhibition will, use this multimedia documentary content, which is stuff which I guess is taken out of stuff that is being posted online all over the place. The AI processes it. It basically renders it, I guess, anonymous as well, to be able to create the message in this online digital art exhibition, which then can be pumped out as QR codes that can be read in different kinds of ways. She actually referenced a number of real art projects, including some at ZKM and at the Garage Triennale in Moscow. It's kind of interesting for her. And then ultimately the intentions of this exhibition is to give a voice to suppressed people expose true agendas, hear each other out. You know, there's no space really for a lot of dialogue. I mean, this is really coming, you know, from her absolute need to speak. Oh, is that my 15 minutes? Oh, damn. Even my clock is done. Okay, almost done. Get motivation to bring the long-awaited change. So we were asking, well, how do you build trust? Well, that's already a difficult thing. And how do you protect personal data? So again, to do that, you have to rely a lot on trust systems, on hacktivists, and so on. And what if Putin's bots attack the platform? Well, that means that our project has succeeded. We are all excited to decode the artworks and see who was the actual audience of the platform. And what are your people of interest? Well, they're the users. They're suppressed groups of Russian society, developers, programmers, hacktivists, media artists, independent galleries, and you. So, ready to start? Thank you. That's where we are.
Super. Yes.
Oh, stop it. Do we take questions or we go for dinner?
I don't know. We take a moment to reflect, I think. There are questions or comments? Gert.
I knew the guy who just put the Soros fake in there is going to jump in.
I mean, it's brilliant. The stealth element is very elaborate. And so it becomes clear how some of that information in the near future could potentially travel.
Yeah.
But it's very obvious also that any form of self-organization, community, or networks, or anything of that is absent in this proposal.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect project, right? I mean, it's from one elective that the student has amongst a whole pile of stuff. She's never had any interaction, you know, with the art world in that sense, and I thought it was brilliant to start to think about how these kinds of structures and platforms where we live and work could be co-opted to kind of support other forms of interaction and discussion. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of technical imperfections and all that, but it was, you know, conceptually, and to see somebody who was really, really struggling with how on earth am I going to survive in this society in Russia and actually be able to talk not just to my friends, but, you know, to anybody else. You know, this project is really a cry, you know, for help. And that's what I think is really, you know, the strength and the beauty of it. I mean, you know, we won't go into all those, you know, other technical issues and stuff, but...
No, but I think for me, it's much more interesting to think of it in relation to the projects that Diana was showing and the questions that she was asking. Because I have a sense that there are people in the same generation, more or less, struggling.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, because she was talking about, you know, the platforms, and that's, you know, we're in there rather than, you know, in the networks. And yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but no, yeah, that's, I really enjoyed, you know, coming after you as well, and after Gert, after what he's talking about the Soros exhibition, to show this, you know, to show this work.
I think it's really relatable, and yeah, exactly. What should we talk about it, or should we do it like as basically did it?
I mean, she actually does have this desire of trying to throw this idea to somebody who can actually try to make something like that, you know, work. She doesn't have, I mean, okay, she worked for, and she has certain technical interests and backgrounds because she worked for a cyber security antivirus company whose name I won't mention in Russia. So she's also coming from a certain quite specific technical context.
I think this is a really good place to start because it gives me a lot of hope because there are people who are thinking about what's going to happen next, both on the political front and on the military front. I think we're all worried and what have you. But I think it's also good that we know that, this young Russian woman is thinking about these things. So I think we have to go and find her and help her to make the next steps.
Yes, well, she's stealthily available somewhere in there under various code names.
I think that I'm not going to try and draw conclusions from any of this, because I think we have time over dinner to talk about what we want. I had prepared something that would not be right at this moment. I will explain that at some other time, but it would have been it would have kind of wrong-footed our situation now.
Have last 5 minutes before we go.
Yeah, no, but with 5 minutes
No,
I
I
can...
mean, at least we can
Raza,
hear
would you like
what
to-
we missed.
Sorry?
Raza,
Maybe
would you
we
like
can hear
to?
what we missed.
No,
No?
I can't even
Okay.
start. No,
Okay.
no, it's...
You can wrap up on the hot seat.
No.
Well, maybe I can give you that little image which I have also, because we've been speaking about Deep Europe. Yes, maybe I can do this. Just a second. It's about the depth and about... No, I shouldn't do this. No.
No, you should.
No, I would. It's about memory, and it's not. When I was writing it, I already thought it's for another situation. It's not right now. I'm very grateful that we were able to do this. I think that the idea to pick up the tradition of the syndicate meetings, which Raza had sometime in the spring, was very timely, and I'm very grateful for your question. We struggled, especially in the spring and in the summer, about how best to do it. I'm very glad that your worries, some of your worries, weren't unnecessary, not unfounded, but for the situation that we experienced, unnecessary. And for me, this is it's obvious that we are going to continue from here. Maybe it's a good moment to tell other people who were not at the breakfast this morning about the fact that there was a conversation this morning about the possibility of reclaiming the name Syndicate, which the community, some of whose members you've heard, which that community lost in 2001 in a flame war, basically. And it has been left dormant since then. And so it might very well be that that term is going to come back. I actually fancy it more than the Deep Europe now at this moment. It has something modernist about it, which I like, and it's nostalgic as well. I want to speak more about the nostalgia with Diana. And I think I will end here. I want to thank Raza for all the work and the inspiration, and for working in such an inspiring way with lots of good people here in Riga. It's really super, together with Maitis, and I hope that you can continue in a good way for yourself and also for the organization. Now we are looking forward to 2 days of intense conferencing about topics that are also very close and dear to the organization, and we are all looking forward to that. But more than that, oh, I should thank the two technicians
Yeah.
who made things
They did it.
so incredibly smooth.
Yes.
It's really, it's a miracle, but it's not a miracle, it's just skill and dedication. So thank you for that, and now I look forward to a drink and seeing you for dinner.
Okay.
And see you in the morning.
See you in the morning, but and also thank you, Andreas, for all the moderation. I'm really sorry that you had to step back, because
No.
I think this is definitely, I feel, you know, papers like this, so that this is something which probably could, yeah, because you said it's in depth, it could really bring, serve some base for some next actions, also activities, because what we heard today is also quite new information, actually, for me, also many things. So, and to say that, and the thing that I understood is that I'm even more confused about this situation, and good thing is that I'm not that aggressive anymore as in the morning, but every morning I'm a little bit, because the stressful background. And then thanks, Andreas, very much for that you picked up. You probably, like me, like a little bit make troubles, because you were kind of experiencing that this my aggressive worries. Yeah, you tried to a little bit calm down and to make some nice thing out of it, which was this event. Okay, thank you, Andreas.